So this is my video on basic word order in French. So let's have a look at the basics then. Quite a few of my students find that it's quite complicated, but actually, if we look at the structure, it's very similar to the English. Let's take an example. I go to the beach. Word for word in French, je vais à la plage. Exactly the same. The complication comes here as if we have a masculine place that we're going to. So je vais au centre commercial. But we need to know that a plus the le squishes together and becomes oh, je vais au centre commercial. But apart from that, it's basically word for word. Je vais au centre commercial. I go to the shopping centre. Okay. We also need to know that in French that je vais can also mean I'm going, so it means I go and I am going. So we can translate both the things there. And quite often it's the tenses that students don't know, which is why they find sometimes it's difficult to get the sentence structure correct. If we're using the past tense, in French, when we're using the past tense, we use j'ai mangé for I ate and I have eaten. Now, if we look at the I have eaten part of it, which is a recent past, it's word for word. Je, I, have, mangé, eaten, une, and pomme. Okay, but we can also translate it as I ate. Okay, so j'ai mangé can be I ate. But again, if you know the passé composé well, then you'd know that was that. Ate, we can say I ate in French, but that's using the past historic. But this past historic is only used in written forms in literature, so you won't need to construct it yourself really. The slight problem with this the passé composé is when we have things like je suis allé à la plage, like I went to the beach, where it uses an être verb. So you could literally say I am gone to the beach. Okay. Sometimes I've heard people say that that's how they teach their students. I am gone to the beach rather than I went to the beach. Then they get the idea that it's être rather than aller. But if you know your être verbs that are used in the passé composé, you'll know how these work. And again, it's word for word. I am gone to the beach. I am gone to the beach. Or I went, and then went is only one word, so it's a little bit like saying I ate. Okay. If we're using the imperfect tense, again, if you know how the imperfect tense is used, it can be used for I used to eat or I was eating. And in French, it's one word, je mangeais. But again, if you learn the imperfect tense, you know how that works. This isn't word for word in French, as in English, but if you know that the imperfect ending gives you used to or was doing something, then you should be able to get the structure correct. When you're using adjectives, it's the inverse of the English generally. I eat red apples, so we swap the apples and red around. We had les in here. I put I like red apples. I don't know why I put I like red apples. Let's just change that to je mange. I think I was going to do I like, but I want you to see the je form of the word. So I eat red apples. Je mange les pommes rouges. So we've inverted the adjective rouge with the pomme apples. If you know how you do your agreements with adjectives, that also helps as well. But the position is after the noun. I put les here, je mange les pommes rouges. It's a general, I eat red apples. So we'd insert the word les here. Although, you may have seen it on the slide as I was correcting, although some common adjectives like petit or petite, grand, grande, beau, belle, bon, bonne, mauvais, mauvaise, nouveau, nouvelle, go before the noun as they do in English. So, for example, j'habite une grande maison. I live in a big house. We could put j'habite dans une grande maison, and that would give you word for word. But j'habite une grande maison is perfectly fine as well. And j'ai un nouveau CD. I have a new CD. I have a new CD. Again, word for word. Okay, so these quite common ones will be used before the noun. And again, you need to know how you do your agreement as well. So have a look at my adjectives video if you're not sure. Que is a bit of a tricky one, and it's quite often left out in English. So, for example, I think Stephen is tall. What we're really saying is I think that Stephen is tall. And in French, you can't get away from putting it in. Je pense que Stephen est grand. Okay. It's usually when we have an introduction of another clause. We have our first clause, I think, separating the clause with a que, the relative pronoun que, and then we have our second clause here, okay, with a different subject. Je pense que Stephen est clause. Right. Direct and indirect object pronouns. So for example, a direct object pronoun would be I eat it. It in this case is the direct object pronoun. And for French, we put the le or the la for it before the first verb, in this case mange. Okay, le or la depending on whether it's a masculine it or a feminine it. But that goes before, so it's the inverse, so it goes before the verb. So I eat, eat, literally. Or if we're doing the imperfect, the passé composé, again it goes before the first verb, but it goes before our avoir here, the auxiliary. We might need to agree it depending on whether it's le or la. Again, look at your passé composé video or notes if you want to know how that works. Je l'ai mangé. And then if we're looking at indirect, I give him the keys. Again, this goes before the first verb. Je lui donne les clés. I give to him the keys, literally in French. I give to him the keys. But the rest of the sentence is in the same order. Je lui donne les clés. So the lui goes before the give. Okay, adverbs of time, so things like normally, usually, sometimes. French, it goes basically in the same place as it would in English. Normally I go on Friday. Normalement, je vais le vendredi. But where in English we can separate the verb here, I normally go. In French you can't do that. But you could put it in other places. So you could say je vais le vendredi normalement, or je vais normalement le vendredi. We could put it in both of those places. Let's have a look at another one. Quelquefois. Quelquefois je mange au restaurant. Je mange au restaurant quelquefois. Or je mange quelquefois au restaurant. So you could have any of those. And notice the place where we've put the adverb sometimes, quelquefois here, and here, and here, but not separating the subject pronoun and the verb. Okay, so quite often it's those little tricky bits, and if you know your tenses well, then the order should be quite easy. So things like I will go, quite often I get students who look up the word will because they want to do the future tense, but if they knew the future tense, then they would know that it's j'irai, and there's no will that you'll find in the dictionary, apart from a will that you leave when you die, which often gets put in. Or would, same thing for would, the conditional tense. So again, they wouldn't find the word would. They need to know that it's the conditional tense we're using, and it would be j'irai. Okay, so I hope you got the hang of that. Rewind it back if you need any other help, or ask in class if you need some extra clarification.